You have to understand something that most people get completely backwards when it comes to avoidance. The instinct to chase, to prove, to win them over, it feels like love, but to an avoidant, it feels like pressure. And pressure, to them, is indistinguishable from threat. So what happens? The more someone leans in, the more the avoidant leans out. Not because they don't feel something, but because they feel too much, too fast, and they don't have the internal wiring to process it safely. Their nervous system isn't calibrated for intensity. It's calibrated for intensity. It's calibrated for self-protection. This is why the people they form lifelong bonds with are not the ones who chase them endlessly. It's the ones who don't. Now, that doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean emotional unavailability or playing games. It means something far more grounded and far more rare. It means a person who is secure enough within themselves that they don't feel the need to pursue, convince, or collapse their boundaries just to maintain connection. Because here's the paradox. When someone stops trying to secure the avoidant finally begins to feel secure. Think about the psychological message being sent. When you chase someone, even with the best intentions, there is an underlying signal. I need something from you. I need you to respond, to validate, to stay close so I can feel okay. And an avoidant, whether consciously or not, interprets that as emotional demand. But when someone stands grounded, when they express interest without urgency, care without pressure, presence without pursuit, it creates a completely different internal experience for the avoidant. For the first time, they are not being pulled, but they are not being managed. They are not being emotionally cornered. They're being allowed. And in that space, something shifts because avoidants are not incapable of connection. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. They are deeply capable, but only in environments where connection does not come at the cost of their autonomy. So when they encounter someone who doesn't chase them, it disrupts their entire expectation of relationships. They start to feel curiosity instead of resistance. They start to move closer instead of pulling away. Not because they are being persuaded, but because they are finally not being pursued. This is where real attachment begins for them, not in intensity, but in absence of pressure. And here's where it becomes even more important. The person who doesn't chase is not doing it as a strategy. They're doing it because they are whole, because they understand that connection cannot be forced and that anything built on pressure will eventually collapse under it. That kind of presence is incredibly disarming to an avoidant. It removes the need for defense. It lowers the guard slowly, naturally, without confrontation. And over time, the avoidant begins to associate this person, not with anxiety, not with obligation, but with ease. And ease is what they trust. So if you're trying to understand who avoidants stay with long-term, it's not the person who loved them the hardest. It's the person who didn't make love feel like something they had to escape from. Because in the end, the deepest connections aren't formed through pursuit. They're formed in the quiet space where no one is trying to run and no one is trying to chase. And that's the moment an avoidant finally stops moving away and chooses to stay. You have to grasp a fundamental truth about avoidance. Autonomy is not optional for them. It is a lifeline. From the outside, it may seem like they push people away or reject closeness, but the reality is far more nuanced. Avoidants do not resist connection itself. They resist any connection that feels like it will compromise their independence. This is why the people they form lifelong bonds with are those who understand and respect their need for emotional space. Think about the psychology behind it. For an avoidant, closeness often triggers the same alarms as suffocating or loss of control. Their nervous system interprets dependence, demands, or attempts to merge as danger. Over years, experiences like these condition them to erect walls, sometimes almost instinctively. And yet underneath all of it, they crave trust, intimacy, and genuine human connection. The catch is that trust can only grow when there is no pressure, when space is honored, and when boundaries are not questioned. So who earns that bond? The person who approaches them with a rare type of emotional intelligence, someone who does not mistake distance for rejection, who does not panic when they step back, and who does not equate independence with disinterest. This is someone who can hold themselves and their own emotions steady without trying to control the avoidance responses. They accept that the avoidance need for space is not a personal slight. It is simply how their mind and heart navigate the world. And that acceptance is profound because it communicates. I see you, I respect you, and I will not try to change the essence of who you are. What does this mean in practice? It means creating a dynamic where presence is consistent but not invasive. It means checking in without over-checking, engaging without suffocating, and supporting without trying to steer. Avoidants are experts at reading intentions. They know when someone's care is conditional, when it comes with strings. But when they sense unconditional respect for their autonomy, something remarkable happens. Their defenses relax, their walls begin to lower, and they start to allow themselves to be seen without fear of losing themselves in the process. There is also a philosophical layer here. Respect for autonomy is respect for self. Avoidants are drawn to people who demonstrate that they too are whole, capable, and independent. It's not just about giving the avoidant space. It's about modeling what healthy interdependence looks like. Because at the core, avoidants are not afraid of intimacy. They are afraid of enmeshment. They are not afraid of love. They are afraid of losing the sense of self that allows them to survive and thrive. And when someone meets them in this way, the bond that forms is unlike any other. It's not a bond built on need or intensity. It's a bond built on choice, freedom, and mutual respect. The avoidant experiences connection as safe, steady, and enduring. They learn that closeness doesn't have to mean suffocation, that love doesn't have to feel like a trap, and that they can belong without surrendering themselves. So the next time you think about why an avoidant stays with someone for a lifetime, remember this. It's not about charm, drama, or even persistence. It's about respect. Deep, unwavering respect for their inner world, their autonomy, and their boundaries. The person who gives this gift of understanding does more than just earn trust. They earn the heart of someone who rarely gives it freely. And in that quiet, unpressured respect, the avoidant finally discovers a paradoxical truth. The closer you allow me to be without trying to own me, the closer I can be to you. This is the essence of lifelong bonds for an avoidant. Freedom, honored at every step, creating a connection that lasts not in spite of independence, but because of it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of avoidance is the way they experience emotion. People often assume that because avoidants pull back, they are cold, or indifferent. The truth is the exact opposite. Avoidants feel deeply, sometimes overwhelmingly so, but they experience emotions differently. They are highly sensitive to intensity, and emotional turbulence can trigger their instinct to withdraw. That's why the people they form lifelong bonds with are not the ones who create drama, escalate conflicts, or live in emotional extremes. They are drawn to stability, to a calm center in the storm. Think about it. When an avoidant encounters someone who swings wildly between highs and lows, excitement and despair, joy and anger, it doesn't feel like connection. It feels like unpredictability. It feels like a threat. Their nervous system is already primed for hypervigilance in close relationships. So anything that threatens balance, even love expressed with too much force, can activate fear and push them away. They crave a partner whose emotional state is consistent, who can hold their own even when life gets messy, who doesn't require them to constantly manage or regulate someone else's feelings. Emotional stability is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. It's the ability to feel fully and yet remain grounded, to respond to intensity without being swept away. This is magnetic to avoidance because it creates an environment where they can engage without fear of being engulfed. They begin to understand that closeness doesn't have to mean chaos. That connection doesn't have to come with turbulence. And in that understanding, something profound happens. They start to trust. They start to show up, not just physically, but emotionally in ways they couldn't when the surrounding environment felt unpredictable. Philosophically, this speaks to a universal principle about human connection. We are drawn to those who mirror the calm we secretly long for. Avoidants, more than most, need this reflection. They need someone Who is emotionally regulated because it offers a blueprint for safety, for belonging, for intimacy that doesn't trigger flight. They need someone who demonstrates that feelings are not something to escape from, but something to integrate without losing control. Now, consider what this looks like in real life. This isn't someone who suppresses their emotions or pretends everything is always fine. It's someone who expresses themselves thoughtfully, who communicates without creating panic, who handles conflicts without tipping into extremes. They are predictable, not because they are boring, but because they are reliable. Their emotional landscape is navigable, not treacherous. And for an avoidant, that reliability becomes the foundation for connection. It is the signal that this person is safe, not just for the moment, but for the long haul. This is why avoidants often form lifelong bonds with people who others might call steady or calm or even boring. What others see as lack of passion, avoidants experience as clarity, trust, and freedom. They experience someone who can love deeply without losing themselves, someone who can hold space without pressuring them, someone whose emotional presence feels like home instead of a storm. Over time, this stability teaches the avoidant that closeness does not have to be dangerous. It teaches them that vulnerability can be safe. And it teaches them that the deepest connection comes not from intensity, but from equilibrium. So when we talk about who avoidants bond with for life, it's not the person who excites them, overwhelms them, or challenges them into intensity. It's the person who is emotionally grounded, who moves through life with steady presence, who can hold their own without demanding that the avoidant fix or stabilize them. That is the rare person who can earn the avoidant's trust, loyalty, and love, not through draft, or pursuit, but through calm, consistent, unwavering emotional presence. And in that calm, the avoidant finally discovers the truth. Connection is not about survival. It's about serenity. And serenity is what keeps them close for a lifetime. One of the most subtle yet powerful dynamics in avoidant relationships is the way they respond to attempts to fix them. Most people think that love is about helping, guiding, or rescuing, especially when someone seems distant or closed off. But for avoidants, this instinct is experienced differently. They are deeply sensitive to the feeling that someone wants to change them, mold them, or solve them. Even well-intentioned efforts to understand them, to make them open up faster, can trigger alarm bells. And the people they form lifelong bonds with are the ones who don't try to fix them at all. Think about what this means psychologically. Avoidants grow up learning, often unconsciously, that closeness comes with obligation, that vulnerability comes with risk, and that opening up makes them targets for control. Their internal radar is finely tuned to detect pressure, even when it is disguised as care. So when someone approaches them with the mindset of fixing, helping, or correcting, it's experienced as a subtle threat to their autonomy. It activates that old instinct to protect themselves, to withdraw, to erect the very walls that prevent intimacy. Contrast that with the person who doesn't try to fix them. This is someone who accepts the avoidant as they are, not as a project, not as a challenge, not as a puzzle to solve. They understand that closeness comes from acceptance, not from change. They approach the avoidant with curiosity instead of judgment, with interest instead of intervention. They recognize that the avoidant is not broken. They are simply wired differently, and that wiring deserves respect rather than repair. This, more than anything, is what creates the conditions for lifelong attachment. And there's a profound philosophical principle here. True intimacy is not about molding another person to fit your needs. It is about seeing them fully and allowing them to be fully themselves. Avoidants are drawn to people who embody this principle naturally. They are drawn to those who can hold space for complexity without trying to simplify it, who can witness silence without panic, who can accept avoidance without taking it personally. In that acceptance, the avoidant experience is something rare. They feel seen without being manipulated, understood without being pressured, and valued without being correct. Ted, the practical effect of this is transformative. When an avoidant senses that someone is not trying to fix them, the walls they've built begin to soften. Vulnerability becomes less threatening. Emotional engagement becomes possible. They start to test the waters, not because they are being persuaded, but because the environment feels safe enough to allow it. Over time, the person who doesn't attempt to change them becomes the anchor, the consistent presence that allows the avoidant to explore connection without fear of losing themselves. And it's important to emphasize, this is not passive. It's active love, active engagement. But it is love expressed without coercion. It is patience without pressure, presence without intrusion, and empathy without rescue. It is the rare understanding that intimacy grows not through repair, but through acceptance. This is why avoidants will often remain fiercely loyal to these individuals. They feel safe, they feel trusted. And in a life where so much closeness has historically triggered fear, that is a powerful, almost sacred experience. So when we ask the question, who earns the lifelong bond of an avoidant? The answer is clear. It is not the one who chases, who pressures, or who tries to solve. It is the one who respects their boundaries, who honors their pace, and who allows them to be fully themselves. It is the one who embodies acceptance so completely that the avoidant can finally experience intimacy not as a threat, but as a choice. And in that choice, the avoidant discovers something remarkable. The closer I allow someone into my world without trying to control them, the closer I can truly be. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. For the rest of my life, consistency is one of those things people often overlook when they think about love, but for avoidance, it is the single most magnetic quality someone see and possess. Think about what an avoidant experiences internally. Their world is often defined by unpredictability, emotional highs and lows, erratic behavior from others, and the constant question of whether they will be abandoned or overwhelmed creates a nervous system that is always on alert. In that context, consistency is not boring. It is revolutionary. It is the quiet signal that someone is reliable, that the world can be safe, and that connection doesn't have to feel like a roller coaster. Avoidants do not thrive under pressure or uncertainty. They need steady, calm presence. They need someone whose actions match their words, whose emotions are regulated, whose availability is predictable. But, and this is critical, the consistency they crave is not about control. It is not about someone monitoring them, tracking their every move, or demanding explanations. It is about a balance. Someone who is dependable without being constrictive, present without being invasive, and emotionally available without creating obligation. That balance is rare, and that balance is magnetic. Think about it philosophically. Humans are wired to find patterns, to sense reliability. For avoidants who have spent much of their lives bracing for unpredictability in relationships, someone who is consistent becomes a safe harbor. Their nervous system begins to relax because the signals they are receiving no longer spell threat. They can begin to experience connection not as a danger, but as a choice. Over time, this consistent presence reshapes their internal model of relationships. They start to believe that connection can be steady, that love does not have to suffocate, and that closeness does not have to trigger withdrawal. But consistency alone is not enough. It must be paired with the subtle art of non-pressure. Avoidants are highly sensitive to intensity. Even someone who is consistent but overbearing can inadvertently trigger withdrawal. The true art is showing up reliably while allowing the avoidant to move at their own pace. It is letting them engage on their own terms without guilt, without coercion, without frantic reassurance seeking. It is creating an environment where intimacy is offered but never forced. And when that happens, something extraordinary occurs. Trust begins to flourish. Walls start to soften, and the avoidant begins to associate presence with safety rather than threat. It's also about patience. Consistency is often mistaken for passivity, but in reality, it is an active commitment expressed through calmness and stability. The person who earns an avoidance lifelong bond is not reacting to every withdrawal, not chasing every retreat. They are steady, they are reliable, they are present, they are anchored. And this anchor is transformative because it teaches the avoidant slowly but profoundly that connection is not about control. It is about freedom within safety. This is why avoidants will often cling, deeply and loyally to those who embody this quality. The reliability of this person signals more than availability. It signals understanding, trust, and acceptance. Over time, the avoidant internalizes this model. They learn that love can be calm, steady, and enduring. They learn that closeness does not have to trigger panic. And perhaps most importantly, they learn that they can belong without sacrificing their autonomy. So when we ask who forms lifelong bonds with avoidance, the answer is clear. It is the one who shows up day after day with steady presence, without imposing pressure, without creating chaos, without asking for immediate reciprocation. They are the quiet force in the avoidance life, the one who teaches them through action. That intimacy can be safe, that trust can be consistent, and that closeness, doesn't it, ought have to be overwhelming. And in that quiet, steady presence, the avoidant discovers a profound truth. Freedom and consistency together are the foundation of connection. And when both exist, closeness becomes not a risk, but a choice worth committing to for a lifetime. At the very core of an avoidance relational world is a paradox. They crave intimacy, but intimacy terrifies them. They fear being fully known because being fully known feels like losing control, like surrendering themselves to a force they cannot manage. Yet they also long for someone who sees them, understands them, and stays. This is why the people they form lifelong bonds with are not those who demand vulnerability immediately, nor those who rush closeness, but the ones who allow it to unfold gradually over time. True connection with an avoidant is a slow, deliberate, almost sacred process. Consider the psychology of it. Avoidants carry with them the imprint of early experiences, times when opening up led to rejection, criticism, or overbearing attention. Their nervous system learned to anticipate that revealing their inner world would trigger danger. Even in adulthood, that neural wiring remains. So when someone approaches them with patience, with a willingness to let intimacy develop at its natural pace, something remarkable happens. The avoidant begins to feel safe in a way they rarely, if ever, have. Safety is not abstract for them. It is the gateway to trust, and trust is the foundation for lasting connection. And there is a philosophical layer here that is easy to overlook. The slow unfolding of intimacy respects the very essence of the avoidance being. It honors their autonomy, their timing, and their internal rhythms. It communicates a quiet, profound message. You do not have to rush. You do not have to perform. You do not have to compromise who you are to be loved. That message, when truly internalized, can transform the avoidant's entire experience of relationships. They begin to see that closeness does not mean engulfment, that vulnerability does not mean weakness, and that being seen does not mean losing themselves. In practice, this gradual opening looks like patience in action. It looks like listening without judgment, responding without pressure, and creating shared experiences without rushing intimacy. It is about allowing the avoidant to test the waters, to step closer when they feel ready, to withdraw without fear of reprisal. Every small act of consistency, respect, and non-intrusion reinforces the idea that connection can be safe. Over time, this repeated experience rewires their internal model of relationships. It teaches them that closeness is not dangerous, that attachment is not a trap, and that commitment can coexist with freedom. This is also why avoidants often form the deepest, most enduring bonds with people who are quietly, unshakably present. It is not the loud, dramatic gestures that capture their loyalty. It is the calm, patient, unwavering presence that consistently communicates, I am here. I am not leaving. You can reveal yourself at your own pace. In that environment, the avoidant gradually experiments with emotional vulnerability, tests trust in small increments, and discovers that intimacy can be safe, measured, and even enjoyable. Ultimately, the person who earns a lifelong bond with an avoidant is someone who understands that true intimacy cannot be forced. It can only be invited, nurtured, and respected. They provide a space where the avoidant can unfold without fear, can explore closeness without being overwhelmed, and can experience love without feeling consumed. And when the avoidant realizes that someone can see them, accept them, and remain steadfast while they reveal themselves slowly, something profound shift. They stop running, they stop guarding, they stop doubting the possibility of connection. So, when we look at who forms lifelong bonds with avoidance, it is the person who embodies patience, who honors autonomy, who allows vulnerability to unfold naturally, and who creates safety without intrusion. It is the person who teaches, not by words alone, but by action, that love is not a force to escape from, but a sanctuary to stay in. And in that sanctuary, the avoidant finally discovers the ultimate truth. Closeness, when approached with respect, patience, and care, is not a threat. It is the path to belonging, trust, and love that can last a lifetime. So, let's step back and see the pattern. Avoidants are not unreachable. They are not incapable of deep connection. They are not broken. What they are is cautious, wired to protect themselves from being overwhelmed, hurt, or engulfed. And the people they form lifelong bonds with, those rare sacred connections, are the ones who understand the subtle, profound truths of their inner world. They are the ones who don't chase them because they understand that pursuit triggers fear rather than closeness. They are the ones who respect autonomy, who honor the avoidant's need for space, freedom, and self-governance. They are emotionally stable, steady, and consistent, providing safety without creating chaos. They don't try to fix or change them, but accept them fully, flaws and all. They show up reliably, without pressure, proving that presence is far more powerful than intensity. And most importantly, they allow intimacy to unfold gradually, giving the avoidant the time and space to trust, to open up, and to belong fully on their own terms. When you put all of this together, it reveals a universal truth, not just about avoidance, but about connection itself. Lifelong bonds are never formed through force, drama, or urgency. They are formed through patience, understanding, respect, and trust. They are formed in the quiet spaces where people can be fully themselves without fear of judgment or suffocation. And in those spaces, something extraordinary happens. Walls fall, defenses relax, and love, real, enduring love, takes root. So the lesson here is both simple and profound. If you want to connect with someone, if you want to form bonds that last, stop trying to control them, stop trying to fix them, stop chasing them. Instead, be consistent. Be patient. Be emotionally present. Respect their autonomy. Give them space to reveal themselves at their own pace. Show up as a calm, steady, reliable force in their life, and watch how even the most guarded hearts begin to open, slowly but surely, revealing a depth of loyalty, love, and connection that is impossible to break. Because in the end, avoidants do not bond with those who overwhelm, chase, or demand. They bond with those who understand, respect, and honor them fully. And when you become that person, when you embody that presence, you do more than just form a connection. You create a relationship that can last a lifetime. Remember this, the greatest power in connection is not intensity. It is understanding. The greatest intimacy is not control. It is respect. And the greatest love is not about possession. It is about creating a safe space where someone can choose to stay forever.